We're joined on Insead Knowledge by Dalia Mogahed. You're with Gallup Centre for Muslim Studies. You've been speaking here at the Insead Leadership Summit in the Middle East on the almost misunderstanding between the US, the West, and the Muslim world, the Arab world.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that there is such a gap in perception?
I think one of the main reasons that there's such a gap is because we find that it's only a vocal fringe that has been speaking on behalf of, in some cases, both societies. The vast majority of people have been silenced. They are not heard from. They don't have access to communication channels. And those who are claiming to speak for them don't necessarily represent them. So there is a misperception of what people really think because people aren't able to speak for themselves.
And perhaps they don't get sufficient information to be able to make rational decisions. Absolutely.
There is a lack of accurate information. There's a lot of information, but it's sometimes more noise than knowledge.
You made an interesting point that about in the Arab world that people say that they dislike the US government, but like US people, but haven't even met them.
Right.
How does that work?
That's one of the most interesting findings, is that there is a generally positive view of the American people, but not of the American government, even though people have never met an American. And we found that the likely source of that is American popular media, that Hollywood has actually managed to humanize the American people and give them qualities that are likable. So Americans are seen to be very friendly, and this is by people who've never met one, and it really shows the power of media to humanize even what politics might demonize.
And perhaps this works both ways, right?
The reason that it's a bit different is because there is virtually no media that is Muslim-made about Muslims in the United States. Now, when Muslims play a role in a movie or a TV program, it's often, according to many studies, in a negative way, and that portrayal is not made by people about themselves, but it's made by people, about Muslims in the third party, where oftentimes Muslims play the role of terrorists or other negative characters. And so even the portrayals of popular media are not of just regular ordinary people in a family, but of caricatures in many cases.
Now, this study came about as a response to 9/11, that essentially, in a way, trying to find out more about how people think in the Arab world and the Muslim world.
Right. Gallup, its entire premise, its entire inception is about giving leaders the information they need to make good decisions. And one of the most important components of that is to understand the wisdom of the people. Our CEO realized that the United States was deeply engaged and making a lot of decisions about a part of the world that they simply didn't understand, and felt that it was going to have to be the role of an institution like Gallup to help give ordinary people a voice and to do a scientific, evidence-based research on what people really thought, so that there was accurate information where people were getting to have their own voice to speak up for themselves rather than to be spoken for.
And you are involved in a White House advisory council.
Yes.
Have you seen any significant changes in terms of the tone of what we're seeing now between the US and the Arab world, in part because of this sort of advisory council?
I do think that there has been a significant shift in tone. I mean, one excellent example is President Obama's historical speech in Cairo in June that I had the privilege of advising on and also attending. And the framing of the entire conversation has changed per research that shows that the issue is not a lack of admiration for American values, but rather really that people don't not like America. They are concerned that America has negative opinions of them, and that the issue is around respect. So we have seen significant changes in tone and in framing as a result of the research.
One other key issue within this study about gender, you had some interesting findings regarding gender, and almost similar findings actually in terms of women in the West thinking that Muslim women are being oppressed and vice versa.
Yes, exactly. I think that was one of the most interesting findings, is how Muslim women admired much about the West and admired much about the treatment of women, but that they didn't want to adopt Western models wholesale. That in some ways, especially socially, they felt that women were disrespected and mistreated, and that they were too focused on what men thought of them, really very similar to what many Western women believe about Muslim women. So there's almost this mirror reflection between the two sides, really showing that a lot more conversation and dialogue needs to happen to bridge this gap of misunderstanding.
And you've also looked into attitudes within Muslim youth in terms of employment and so on, or unemployment is one of the key issues.
Yes.
With that particular study, you've looked into the dreams and the aspirations of young people. What are they looking for?
What they're looking for is, I think, what much of the world would say they were looking for, and that is a job that allows them to live a life of dignity. People want to be able to support themselves and their family. They want to be self-sufficient. They want to be independent. And across the world, we found that that was the most popular, most frequent dream that people talked about, is around jobs. People want to contribute. They don't want to take.
And just briefly, how can Insead help in the region?
I think Insead can do several things. First, it can offer people the education and the tools that they need to grow their economy and create jobs in the way that everyone is saying that they dream of. And that's why it's so important for Insead to tailor its educational products to the region and what it needs. The second thing is Insead can offer people the space for the exchange of ideas, a safe space where people are able to converse and to learn from one another. And third, Insead can play a role in correcting misperceptions and misunderstandings, create a bridge between East and West. It has a foothold in Singapore and now in Abu Dhabi, and its base is, of course, in France. And so it has the ability to be a network and a bridge between these diverse societies.
Dalia Mogahed, thanks for joining us on this.
Thank you. It's my